Hi folks, I'm here with Andrey out in the field with another real deal in the field at a little project that he's completed back in July at Umina Beach, mate. So welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about, so this one is actually finished, so we can actually see a finished product here. Yeah. Andrey's actually presented a couple of real deals for us in the past, so it's a pleasure to actually be out on site and have a look at one in person.
Thank you.
This particular site, mate, there were a couple of challenges that most people would have run away from. I guess it's a smaller lot than it should have been. So
yes,
you needed to have 750 square meters.
That's right.
And you were 60 square meters short. So that was a little bit of a challenge. What were some of the other challenges that you had on the site that would have made most people run away?
As you said, the main challenge was that the lot size was just under 10% variation, which scared a lot of people in the first place. Second one was that this is Bushfire.
These guys can't see, but just behind us over here, and I might actually turn the camera around, just behind us over here is a whole bunch of bushland. And yes, that is a main road, which is one of our other challenges. So, hoping that's not too wobbly. Professional photography, mate. It looks great. So Bushfire, yep.
Bushfire, RMS Road, just under 10% lot size variation. We had the protected tree at the back, which we successfully removed. No stormwater, so we had to get the easement through the property at the back. What else? And from the landing perspective, the house was unlivable, so no one lived there for about 5 or 6 years. So bank didn't want that land as a security. And also, you can't see here, but there was no access from the street. There was about 1 meter drop from the retaining wall.
So all in all, mate, lots of hairs on what would make most people run away, right? But you took it on. So why did you actually take that on? What was the nugget of gold that you could see that other people couldn't see?
The first thing is I saw that I definitely can fit 3. I knew that I had the feel, given that I have town planning background. I worked nearly 9 years in consultancy firm for the tier 1, tier 2 developers. So I had that sort of confidence.
The confidence in yep.
And also, I knew that everyone would be looking at this project with this angle. So that means everyone will walk away. So for me, in return, I would get the lowest price.
Yeah.
So
and as property developers, we have to solve problems. And the fact that you've run a couple of projects, the fact that you've got some town planning experience, you knew that all the problems that were in front of you could actually be solved. So now, like you said, everyone ran away. So how much did you pick this up for? So super, super cheap, guys.
It actually took me 6 months.
Yep.
It went to the auction first, passed in, then it was on the market for about 2 months. It was selling for, they want 700 in the first place. So it was on the market for 6 months. I started to negotiate offer not like ridiculous prices, like 300. They came back to me saying, you crazy, like it's ridiculous. And then we took about 2 months. I was really slow, showed zero interest. Well, I had the great interest, but I showed little of it. Yeah. And then in 2 months, we agreed on 415.
415. Yeah. So they were originally asking 700, got it for 415. So that's a $285 discount. Yeah. Right, so patience, persistence, knowing that those problems were there, knowing that everyone else was going to run away. Andrey's the last man standing and was able to set the bar and basically lock in profit for problems that you knew that were actually solvable. So let's go through some of the problems one by one. So you rattled them off and see how we actually solved it, because that's what's going to be of interest to our viewers. Yeah. So the first one, you said the existing house wasn't livable. So the bank wasn't willing to consider that as security. So they're effectively looking at this as vacant land, yeah?
Exactly.
Yeah. So vacant land doesn't generate rent, and a lot of banks don't want to use that as security because they're worried about serviceability if you're not generating rent. So that's
exactly. And that was one of the problems because I had another development site in my name at that point of time, and I was hoping. It's not that I was hoping. I had the confidence that we could rent it out.
Yeah.
For any rent would surpass the threshold that I had. It was my serviceability. But it ended up that one value after another decided that this place wasn't livable.
Wasn't habitable.
Yeah, habitable, exactly. So that means they only valued as a land. As in a land, I just couldn't make that threshold. So we went through 1, 2, 3, I think 4 banks. We were 4 months late with settlement. And eventually I had to purchase it outright with private funders.
With private funders. So the private funders, excuse me, folks, private funder solution is always there, but it's a little bit more expensive from a funding perspective. But they look at deals like this for the profit of the deal as opposed to the serviceability element. So for those of you who are looking at, hey, I've got serviceability challenges, know that private funding is actually available. And also know that, I guess, creative finance solutions can also get you across the line as well with creative deals with the vendors and all sorts of things like that. So private finance to got you across.
Yeah, so I talked to a few lenders about the private finance, and then I just realized it's taking too much profit. So I reached out to individuals and I borrowed missing amount.
Yep.
At I think it was 15% at that time.
15% interest he paid. Yeah. So, and I want everyone to know that when we hear these really high interest rates, they sound really, really expensive. But you've got to remember, 15% on a relatively small number for a relatively small period of time. When you actually do the math, the number is just a cost item in your feasibility.
That's
and so long as your feasibility actually makes sense,
exactly.
then scary interest rate numbers shouldn't actually be a problem.
Exactly. For me, I think from my memory, it was $47,000 in interest over the year, I think. Or just under the year. I think it was 9 months before I get DA.
Yeah.
So
$47,000 worth of interest to get to the DA. And how much profit did you lock in? How much cash did you lock in at the end?
Let's chip it off by stages. All up, this if we include all the profit, my profit, all my investors, including that private finance, that would be $665,000.
Yeah.
Then it's 45 gone to private investor in the first place. So it left us with 620. With that 620, another 100,000 went to another investor. So it's left over was 520.
So 550 in your hand. Yeah. So
520.
So 650 in total. That allowed him the ability to pay for the creative finance and the private finance to actually get it there, and 520 in your hand. So that's why, as a line item, folks, it looks scary, but 520 grand that you didn't have otherwise if you didn't do it. So make sure you do that. Now, next problem, protected tree. So how did you actually get rid of the protected tree?
I actually was really scared about it. But when I talked to my town planner, he said, I don't remember exactly the name of the species, but he said that species they only consider as a protective when they grow in a group and they have to be on the foreshore, so we're not too far from the water. So their roots hold the ground against erosion from the sea. If it's behind the first line of the houses, or second line, second, third row, or second, third street, it doesn't have that much value as it would have.
As it would if it was waterfront. Yeah,
exactly.
So getting arborists, I guess, professional reports to actually identify the species, the size of the tree, the location of the tree in relation to other things, what other flora and fauna around that it might be protecting or part of the habitat, all that sort of stuff's going to help you out. So our next problem is slopes away from the road. So we needed to get stormwater out the back of the property and go through a neighbour's yard. So how did you actually solve that one?
So we had two options. Option one, down the street about 50 meters away, there's a first stormwater pit from the latest development. And another stormwater is at the back, is about 20, 25 meters. So plan B was to connect to that stormwater and ask council to excavate that bit. Obviously, there will be cost involved, but it would be that, amazing project as it is, but it would still make good money, even digging that 50 meters of the trench along the street.
But you ended up going out through the back?
Yeah.
So did you have to convince the neighbours to...
Yeah.
So how much did it cost you to convince the neighbours,
I think there was there wasn't that much, and it wasn't about the money. It was about
it's about you've torn up their yard. Can you make their yard pretty and that sort of thing?
Yeah.
So
I think that's cost $15,000.
Yeah, so 15,000. There you go.
Yeah.
So now for me, I always go and introduce myself to the neighbours. I go in with a bottle of red and a bottle of white, and I go, I don't know what you drink, but let's start with one. So how did you actually start that conversation?
It was about making the backyard prettier rather than about the cost or anything like that.
Okay.
And also one of them, they wanted to buy a backtown house at that point of time, but eventually they couldn't make it financially because they, for various reasons, but they were aiming to get the last one at the back and connect two courtyards together.
Oh, that would have been a good solution. Yeah. So, okay, next problem. It's a main road. So RMS, so for those of you interstate, RMS is the state government main roads department. So main road here means the potential for traffic management, which is, people directing traffic past, but it's also, you have to get permission to actually get access onto the road. So what was the solution that you got to for that?
Solution is always cash input. $35,000 was in the budget. For extra cost for RMS, for all these traffic controllers, for all the traffic barriers, signs, traffic controllers being here when there is delivery on site and off site. But eventually ended up being, I don't know if I can say in the camera or not, it was reduced to minimum.
It was reduced to the minimum. So that's a very politically correct, mate. I'm just worried you might be off camera. So yes, very creative answer. Trying to think what other problems we had here.
Bushfire.
So bushfire. So opposite, I guess, quite a lovely escarpment, beautiful rockery and an insane number of trees on just literally about 20 meters away. So you had to do a bushfire report.
It was one before highest. I don't remember. I think it was bell 27. I think 30 starts flame zone. So we're just before the flame zone. So the road is covered by flame zone. And I think flame zone stops here on the footpath. And that's where the bell 27 starts here. So obviously aluminium gutters, mesh on the gutters, all this.
So we might just explain for everyone else, when you're close to bushfire, the further away you are, it's whether or not you have to take, I guess, direct fire immunity or whether or not you've got flying embers and things like that. So you have to slightly design your house a little bit differently, sometimes add some extra expense in the actual construction and the material as to how combustible it actually is. So did that add a lot to your construction cost?
We may talk about it in the cost section, but I didn't because for some reason, most of the developers that I had, they are in the bushfire. So all my cost calculations, they based on the...
You had baselined it, built that in up front.
So,
very good. And I think the last problem that you said you had was no gas to the property.
Yeah, it wasn't that much, a problem because you can always have an electrical electrical oven. But what we did, I talked to the Gemini. Gemini is a gas supply here in this area, and asked them if they can actually put the pipe together with the stormwater. First, they asked me to pay $10,000, and I replied them back saying for $10,000, I have a nearly self-sufficient it's called solar panel system. And I said, I don't actually need your gas at all for that price, so I better off just go with the solar panels. They came back to me immediately and say, "Oh, okay, no problem."
Okay, no, for free.
For free. Yeah.
So if you don't ask, folks, you don't get, right? You've got to be able to know how and when to challenge things. So, mate, overall, I guess fantastic result for. I guess they look good. You've made some good money. You've solved a whole bunch of problems. What advice would you give our listeners, I guess, knowing when they see a site that have got hairs on it, what advice would you give them to determine how they can actually haggle it down and why they should not run away from problems?
I always look at this at any development from two perspectives. Perspective one is you can always go safe and pay premium. That is choice number one. Option two is to find something difficult, but budget for everything that is every line which you think will be difficult. Just have a healthy budget for that item and make sure at the end is out of the list, everything goes difficult and everything comes in the worst case scenario, you still make money.
Yeah, and I would add to that though to say, if you're going to take on those challenges, make sure it's A, within your skill set, so that you actually know that the problem can actually be solved. And B, you've got the right consultants to give you the right advice that it can be solved. Because don't think you can solve every single problem. They can, but sometimes it costs a little bit more than you'd like. Yeah.
And maybe the one more advice is, whoever looks for the edge will eventually find it. So be careful. Be careful with this, I guess.
That is probably the best advice. Yeah. And with that, my friend, I'm going to say thank you very much for sharing your project.
Thank you.
And folks, we're going to, I'm hoping we'll get to see the full Real Deal story at one of our upcoming meetups. But in the meantime, folks, stay tuned. We've got a whole bunch of these Real Deals coming your way. Bye for now.
Bye.